Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting this Monday, March 10th. I'm going to call it to order and invite Councillor Uhrig to read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants past, present, and future who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I'll just invite you to join me for a moment of silent reflection on our business today. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? I see none, but if it occurs to you, please bring it forward at that time. And we're going to begin today with a special education session, and it's my pleasure to invite Sergeant Rob Griffin and Sergeant Catherine Ross, Municipal Police Bureau presentation, if you'd like to take the podium, and we look forward to learning and perhaps getting a lot of our questions answered. Do you want to put the mic on there? Sorry, there we go. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, for having us here today, and also your local detachment here as well. Staff Sergeant Anderson and Acting Inspector Barfoot is here and kindly invited us to come out and talk today. I'm with my colleague, Sergeant Cat Ross. Hopefully we can go through this without it being too boring. You know, billing and stuff isn't always the most exciting conversation or topic to go through, but just to preface this whole slide deck, I guess you could say, is that there's going to be a lot of information in the slides. So we're not going to go too deep into all that. We really wanted these slides to also be a resource for you moving forward. So when we leave here today, we wanted to leave material in here that you could reflect back on and see that would help make sense of things, especially when it comes down to the numbers. We have some really good breakdowns in there. Before we come out, this is normally a very generic presentation, but we wanted to change it up today. So before we came out, we kind of did a made in Meaford presentation. So we put your bill in there, we put your information in there to make it reflect for your community. So hopefully we can go through that. I'm just going to start the presentation off by going over a quick overview. So these are the things we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about a few things about things that you don't think might relate to billing. So just bear with us on that because they actually do relate to billing and they're very important. So one of those things is OPP, Integrated Service Delivery. It's how we deliver our service as the OPP. We're going to talk about detachment boards versus police services boards. I'm not sure of the experience in the room, but maybe there's some people in the room that have sat on a police services board before. And I know there's one or two in here that are on a future detachment board. So we'll talk about the differences between those quickly. And then we'll get into the financial recoveries and provincial responsibilities, talking about cost recovery, and then the annual billing statement. And then we'll open up for question and answer. So as we go through, if there's a question that you want to say right away, just raise your hand. I'll try to answer that. If not, we can also wait to the end and just make it, we may cover that off before we get to the end of our presentation. So starting out, just talk quickly. When I first joined the OPP, I've been with the OPP under 5 years, but I've been a police officer for much longer. I've actually worked for 3 police services, 2 municipal services, and the OPP. And this is one thing that came when I came here. I said, our vision, safe communities, secure Ontario. What does that mean? And then I learned that basically, Safe Communities Secure Ontario states that OPP, we have a dual mandate here. So when I say a dual mandate, that means we police the province as a whole, and then we also have a municipal policing responsibility as well. That's what we're doing here in your community. So Safe Communities, Secure Ontario, meaning our municipalities and the province. So simply, it's the focus of our strategic plan. So when we talk about our strategic plan, which is a whole other presentation, but I just want to touch briefly on this because there's 3 main categories of our strategic plan that we focus on to get us to our vision. And those are our people, our work, and our communities. So with our people, that's empowering our members. Our work is basically enhancing the technologies and resources for our people to do their work. And then our communities is what we're doing here today. And that's the partnerships with the communities across Ontario that help us achieve that vision. So that the safety, people with a shared vision of public safety. So move on from that. So when I started the presentation, OPP integrated service delivery. So our dual mandate, policing the province, policing municipalities. When you see a police officer out in your community on a day-to-day, that police officer could be doing one of two things. Number one, they could be doing a policing responsibility for the province, or they could be doing a policing responsibility for the municipality. So there's a reason why when we do these partnerships that we use this integrated service delivery. If we had to have police officers out there specifically for provincial needs and police officers out there for municipal needs, that'd be like a double cost. So when we partner with your communities across the province, that we can share this cost. So we share the resources, and resource being an employee, an officer. So like I said, you see a police officer out there, they're either doing provincial or municipal duties. How do we track that, and how do we bill for that? So very simply, when a police officer starts their duty at the beginning of the day, they log into their computer and they log on with the dispatch. And at that time, they will start tracking their day. And we do that through what we call a daily activity reporting tool. This is a digital tool. So when the police officer is doing their general patrol on the highway, it'll be tracking that provincial duty of highway safety and traffic enforcement. All of a sudden, a call for service comes in. They will then be put on that call for service, which is now a cost recovery item for a municipality. So this is how we separate our billings. When I talked about there's things in the background that are happening, integrated service delivery is one of them. So when we're trying to achieve our vision of Safe Communities, Secure Ontario, we also have to make sure that when we're billing for that, or cost recovering is what we like to call it, that we are cost recovering in the right budget, whether that's a provincial budget that we're recovering from, or if it's a municipal budget we're recovering from. So I'll move into quickly detachment boards versus police services boards. And I apologize moving quickly here, but I know we have a bit of a time frame. When we were, before the CSPA came out, we had police services boards, which would fall under our contract policing. And then we had CPACs, we used to call them community police advisory committees, which were under a non-contract agreement with the OPP. Now, everybody has no contract. So basically a contract meant a lot of different things when we did have them, but now everybody who is policed by the OPP has the same options. Before you used to have a contract if you wanted to qualify for certain grants and whatnot. Now that's not required. So everybody is the same, so no contracts. So whatever was available for specifically contract police agreements before is now open to anybody. So if you were under a 5.1 before, you would be now eligible for certain grants and things that you might not have been eligible for as a 5.1 agreement. So when you are under an OPP policed municipality, you will have a detachment board, which is regulated through the CSPA. And there's some differences here. When I've up on the slide that you can see, there's actually four main categories that we look at when we're looking at detachment boards versus police services boards. And the big categories that you can see, I'm just going to pull this my screen ahead of me. My eyesight is not what it used to be. So first of all, scope of oversight. When we have a detachment board, the detachment board oversees OPP detachments serving multiple municipalities or First Nations, where a police services board would focus on an individual police service, which is still the same case. So when you're reading the CSPA, it's really important to realize there still is police services boards, but they're not associated to OPP, only municipal police services. So when you see that reference police services board, it's important that you reference that back to a municipal policing service, not OPP. So in the CSPA, anything that be referenced detachment board would reference your municipality here. Policy development in a detachment board, establishing local policies with the detachment commander is one of the duties. However, with a police services board, you develop policies for a municipal police service. So a much broader scope, almost like managing the whole police service. With the detachment board, it's much better. The community can focus more on the day-to-day of what the community needs are, more so than the bureaucracy of running a police service. Reporting requirements, next category, providing annual reports to the municipalities or band councils. So taking what the OPP has done and taking reports back, which is legislated now, versus with the police services board, where you would prepare and publish strategic plans and annual reports. Great news is, as you saw in the front of the presentation, we've already done a strategic plan. So there's no need for the municipality to sit down and figure out a policing plan. We've done that. And what the focus is with these detachment boards is to focus on your community, what your needs are, what the local needs are versus the whole provincial needs. Community representation, one of the main reasons of having the board's creation is to have more local representation and be more diverse. And, you know, we see it all the time when you have a police services board and you have a municipal police service. We don't normally get together monthly or bi-weekly, whatever the schedule is for your specific municipality, and talk about policing. So this really brings all municipalities together. So if you have 7 municipalities, all with representation that can come to a board meeting, sit on a board together. I know the board here is quite large from what I remember. It gives a great opportunity to talk about local issues that affect each other. So, you know, the old saying is, you know, crime doesn't have any borders, right? So, you know, why talk about just one municipality when your neighbors are right next door and we can talk about, are those issues affecting you as well? So it's a great opportunity just to get diverse perspectives and learn more about the communities that are under the same detachment command. So let's go to the next slide here. I'm going to turn this over to Kat and give it a break for a second and let her talk about those breakdowns of the municipal policing recoveries and provincial policing recoveries.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you for letting me talk about these important pieces. So financial recoveries and provincial responsibilities. So my colleague talked a little bit about how we collect that data. We're obviously analytics driven. It's important for us to accurately measure where and how long those officers are doing work. So I'm going to lean into more of the financial side now. And like Rob said, we're going to lean into your specific bill. We'll post it and we'll talk about how when we're a provincial service, things are provincially driven. And the billing model, although we haven't included slides here, to do with the inception of the billing model, which came in 2015. But we really needed a fair and transparent way to calculate and communicate cost recovery is basically what we're trying to achieve. So I'll go into a little bit here. So on this slide, you will see a distinction between municipal policing recoveries at 497 million. And this is an encapsulation of the detachment staff, the supporting positions, and ODOE, which is other direct operating expenses. We will funnel this down a little bit and talk about it more as we get into the next subsequent slides. Then you see on the right, or the gray area, is our provincial responsibilities. There is no cost recovery to municipalities for those services. They're quite extensive. If we think of our aviation program, if we think of all of the support for detachments that we offer, so we're part of the general headquarters support staff, none of that is not generally cost recovered from municipalities. It is a provincial responsibility. So it's important to look and just make a distinction between those two areas of budget. It also incorporates traffic safety, investigations, intelligence, and those specialized response team. That includes your local or emergency response team members, which is a tactical element that assists with large calls for service. When Rob was talking about integrated service delivery, and a little bit about that's kind of how these pieces work together to support our detachments, our marine units, our SAFE team, our ATV patrols. So let's say we have a missing person call, which I think is a good one to reflect on. We're very scalable, being a provincial service as well. We bring in, I call it the cavalry. Everybody comes in. We're here to do an effective call. we need to make sure that we locate that person, and we can integrate from other detachments. We can integrate and pull from our provincial services, which are not cost recovered for. So really it's those large scale pieces that we can assemble very quickly to make sure that we're responsive and effective to that unique need that that's in your community. And again, those are not cost recovered for. So again, I talked a little bit about municipal recoveries, and I said I would kind of unfold that a little bit more. So again, it's detachment staff, your frontline constables, and your civilian administrative staff. So there's almost like a bricks and mortar piece, and we call that our base services, not to be assigned to like base service, but it's a basic part or an infrastructure of the policing. The availability to have a trained officer show up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with all the equipment they need, if that makes sense. It's almost like a bricks and mortar piece. And then subsequent to that, we have our calls for service recovery, which I'll talk a little bit about later. When I talked about our support and other direct operating expenses, if you think of everything behind that police officer to show up and be available, it's no surprise we have lots of technology behind us now. We have body-worn cameras, all the gear that our frontline officers, they need to be trained annually. There's all the legislative components that come into effect. It's a big, complex, and risky operation, what we do. So we need to make sure we have that preparatory piece, and we're using the latest technology to combat crimes through our communities. But you think of those pieces like our comm center operator, there's a human being behind that has pay and benefits, and they need to have the latest equipment in order to be able to see what's happening on their end and appropriately send out our provincial and our municipal complement to do the call. Detachment guards, provincial police academy, and our in-service training unit. Our vehicles, our uniform and equipment, our radios, IT and telephone support, right? Everything that gets us there to your call, prepared to answer. Then I'll lean into the provincial responsibilities, and I will apologize, there is a typo on this being a new slide that we have prepared, but the figure is slightly different. Rob, I think you were reflecting on that on the way over here. It's supposed to be billion. I apologize for that. It's slightly larger than that, but that is our provincial responsibilities budget. So we think of things, you see the pictures on the slide, it's our aviation, our helicopters, our fixed wing operations. And those are important pieces for us to patrol and to do investigative and call response to our waterways, trails, and Kings highways. Investigations such as child exploitation, anti-rackets, organized crime investigation and support. Our intelligence, so things we might not see or think about, but our covert operations. There's not a day I don't read the headlines where there's, something really pivotal happening that affects our communities and we're working actively even when you don't see us out there. Provincial anti-terrorism and hate crimes analysis and our field intelligence. I won't read everything under specialized response teams, but I think we're starting to kind of get all those ideas out. But our canine response, our emergency response teams, our negotiations, our underwater search and recovery, and our urban chemical response team. So all of these specialized services, when things don't go well, our trained professionals are there, and that's a provincial responsibility we don't cost recover for. All right, just taking a second to just look over this slide. I think just spending a moment to understand what it's about and how we've categorized it to help us understand the municipal cost recovery under the OPP billing model. So I just want to shift the focus a little bit, and I just want us to start thinking about we are collecting things from a provincial perspective, and then we're carving them out. And I will talk about that later as we get to your specific bill. But a provincial mindset to go through the cost recovery, I think, is an important piece of this. So if we look at the pyramid, this municipal cost recovery, which I talked about, is 497 million from all the municipalities that we serve and cost recover for. In green, and then the colors correspond to your specific bill, which we'll get to in a couple slides, but we've tried to make the designations and the visual cues easier to capture as we walk through the presentation. So I talked about other costs, which is at the top of the pyramid, and it's $53 million. It's allocated directly to municipalities based on your arrangement. It also has components of overtime, court security, accommodation and cleaning, and additional services. So that's that ODOE portion that I was talking about in the previous slide. If we go one tier down, we're at 208 million. Again, just keeping that kind of provincial piece in our minds. This is where sometimes we want to make sure that we're very clear in our messaging. When we collect calls for service, municipalities pay their proportionate share in a percentage, which we'll see when we get to your bill. So we capture it and then we divide it based on your unique service level. So it's charged to municipalities according to your usage, percentage of your provincial cost calls for service cost. It does not include incidents which are generally generated through proactive policing. So such as, we may do a ride program, and as a result of that, we get, there's a separate investigation. So generally those kinds of pieces. Crime calls, provincial statutes, motor vehicle collision, general calls for service. So it's generally that reactive call for service that we cost recover for. Then we see the lowest tier here, which is 236 million, and it's highlighted in orange. And that's our base service cost. Again, not a basic service, but just the base service, more like an infrastructure or bricks and mortar charge. It's allocated among municipalities on an equal per property basis, 189.44 per property. And that's remained relatively stable since the inception of the billing model in 2015. And that's really the goal of that billing model. We did a lot of, us and the ministry combined did a lot of consultation with municipalities and said, well, what do you need in that cost recovery piece? How can we better communicate? What do we need? And stability really rose to the top of the needs for municipalities. We need stability in the cost. So we use a lot of averages when we do our bills. And I'll explain that a little bit later when we cost recover. Anything to add, Rob? Because we're starting to get into a bit more of the complex. Any questions so far?
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Cannon. Just a quick one. 189.44 per property. That's for every property in Ontario?
It's for every property the OPP cost recovers for.
Okay.
Yes, thanks for your question. I believe we have a slide in this as well that shows some of the trends, which is helpful because it just gives it a bit of perspective and context. So this one is not, this one is very tiny. I apologize for that. Might have to minimize, but the reason we included it, again, we're corresponded the colors from the pyramid slide to make things, to capture it a little bit better. But this just shows you what we recover from the municipalities we police on a provincial scale. So it gives us the big numbers, what we're looking at and what we cost recover for. So again, the orange or the base services, you'll see every single line item. I think your bill is about 33 pages. You have that memorized? That's amazing. But the reason, if you haven't had a chance yet and you get an opportunity to leaf through the cost recovery, the OPP cost recovery bill or the bill, our financial services unit, which is the partner bureau partner for us, they've made note sections in there on almost every piece that you see within it. So again, that's back to that transparency piece of we want municipalities to understand what we're doing and why. So you'll see lots of note sections and it'll explain basically what's included in those cost recovery line items to make sure that transparency really comes through. So those questions are answered on the bill when they arrive to your CAO and your clerks in the fall of every year. Yes, please, Deputy Mayor.
Sergeant Ross, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, may I ask, late in 2024, we were all made aware that there was going to be a significant increase in municipal recoveries from municipalities. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to us about how that happened. And we appreciate very much that through conversations with the province, those were decreased. That helped our budget significantly. But I wonder if you can speak to the reasoning behind those significant increases and how we got where we are and whether or not we should anticipate increases again then for 2026.
It's a great question. We're happy to address it here today. So the large line items that influenced that is when we do cost recovery and annual bill estimates or cost estimates, we're bound by legislation to only increase it by 1%. What was happening is we were behind on our collective agreement. That is negotiated through the OPP Association and Treasury Board Secretariat, so at the government level. So when it was decided upon and when it was finalized, we had some salary increases. We need to remain competitive. We need to pay our people fairly for the work that they're doing. So we had to make the cost recovery reflect those years in which we didn't have a collective agreement. Did you have anything else to add on that? Because it is a complex issue, but those was the primary driver, was the salary increases and the benefits increases for the civilian and uniform members.
Like earlier, we were bound for the 1% increase per year, and then once that was lifted, it all came back. And we also had some other reasons for the increase as well. When we look at just looking at one line, court security, when we had the courts closed down during COVID, because our bills are based on a 4-year average, we're kind of catching up to all those averages now. When we go to the next slide after this one, we'll actually show a bar graph of the trend that occurred over the last 3-4 years. But as Kat had mentioned, once we collective agreements were completed, and then the catch up and the bounce back from COVID, it appeared to hit us all at once. And it was a large increase. And I think that's why the ministry stepped up and assisted with the discount. That was a one-time discount for last year. And to answer your question directly, yes, there is going to be an increase next year. And the ministry's been very public about this in the news. I haven't had any direct messaging, but they are working on a solution for that. So that's one positive thing. If they said they're working on a solution and they're looking to continue assistance, that's fantastic news. So the election's over, everyone's coming back to work, and I think that we're hoping to get messaging like that. And last year when we reflect back, it seemed like late messaging. We put out a message from our bureau in the early part of the year about an increase, but not knowing exactly what that increase was going to be. Once all the chips fell into place, we did see a large increase, which they did come and address. So I'm hoping that we'll see the same result this year with additional assistance. So we're, I guess you say, standing by and waiting for word of what that's going to be. But the news is covering it, and I'm sure that locally here your representatives are addressing and inquiring about that as well. So fingers crossed that answers your question. I hope that helps.
Just like to mention one, usually we talk about resources at the end of the presentation. I'd just like to touch on them now. So we do an in-depth webinar every year when the bills come out in the fall. And our financial services unit takes the time. I think is it a 1-hour presentation now, almost 2, that goes through in depth, and they did a very in-depth piece. It is pre-recorded, it's recorded. It'll be available on opp.ca to anyone who wishes. We do cover the drivers of that cost increase as well. Again, just the couple things that Rob and I were talking about. Of course, COVID was a driver. We're returning to pre-pandemic activity levels as well. But they explain it very, very well in the financial terminology that we're familiar with through budgets, etc. So yeah, if that answers your question, there's an additional resource. It should be posted in a week or two, that webinar, and there are additional resources available on opp.ca at this time. Thank you. Want to cover the bill, Rob, or do you want me to cover it? So you can see we've included the front page or first page for a snapshot, a high-level overview of the 2025 annual billing statement. This is your revised statement. So after the financial relief came in, we issued new financial statements out to each municipality. And of course, this is your own Meaford. So you can see, and again, we've color-coded them just for ease and simplicity of identification. We have the base service. You see your property counts, your household, commercial, and industrial added up. 6244 is the number on that. We get that information through MPAC. You see the cost per property. Again, this is for your base service. I mentioned it's a cost or a cost recovery of $189.44 per property. And then your total cost is highlighted on the right. Then we get into the calls for service. So total all municipalities municipal portion. And as I explained, we have our provincial kind of thinking on this. And we put all the calls for service in the province together and we carve out your proportionate share. There's about 20 pages of your bill that break down those calls into nine categories. So it's very detailed, gives you an idea of the health of the community and things that are happening so that you're able to work with your local detachment command staff to understand kind of what those priorities are and how to begin to work on those things. So we do break it down and this is how we cost recover for it. So we give you the total municipal number, then we break down your municipal proportionate share is 0.4934% of the total provincial calls for service. We break that down then or convert it into a cost per property. And we do that because we understand through our analytics how long it takes an officer to do that. We use a 4-year average of calls for service, which I'll show you in a moment. Again, that's to even out and smooth out any spikes or dips to try to keep that cost stabilized. We have a total cost per property of a 165.63, and it also gives you your total cost, which is just over $1 million. Then you'll see a notation for overtime, which there is a slight adjustment. Prisoner transportation, everyone in the province, because we use that service, there is a cost recovery component of $1.67 per property. Everyone is cost recovered on that to the same dollar figure. And then we come down to our total 2025 estimated cost per property. So for Meaford, it's $370.41 per property, and our final total over on the right. Then we have some discount line items, which there will always be a note about, and our 2023 year-end adjustment. So our total grand total revised 2025 monthly billing amount, $175,413. So that's generally a high-level overview of what components are included and what we're cost recovering for from the municipality of Meaford. Go ahead, sir, Councillor.
Yes. When you refer to households, I can see detached, semi, fourplex, so on and so forth, being a household. How do you apartments? How do you consider that? Is an apartment building one household unit, or how does that figure in?
So
Because we have a lot of different types of residences in our municipality. And
So thank you for your question. It's a common question we get. I actually brought a printout of our breakdown because it's a typical question we get. So if it's okay with you, I'm happy to leave the breakdown. It just explains it in great detail for you. So this might be a resource. Is it okay if we tackle your question that way? Is that okay? May I deliver it to you, sir, or would you like me to leave it with clerk? Thank you very much. Thank you. And that is available on our website as well. Did you have anything to add, Rob?
Just a quick follow-up to that. Yeah, every single residential unit, so an apartment building would, because they pay their own individual property tax, it would be considered a household or a unit. So it would be a billable unit, where you wouldn't get things like farmland, vacant farmland would not be something that's on that. So as Kat had mentioned, there's an extensive list, but I think that's what you're getting at. I just wanted to give you clarity on that before we moved on. Go ahead.
well, unfortunately, sometimes inhabitants of apartments do need police services. So I'm just trying to get a little more complete picture, but you go ahead. I'll follow along.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. Would you like to keep going or you good? So Rob is just going to give you a change of voice as we move through all of this material. So I'll step aside.
Thank you, Kat. Okay, so as we mentioned before, there's a quick snapshot of the billing model over the last, well, going back a number of years. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 7 years there of data. As you can see, the average cost per property today in 2025 is $399 across the province, and yours, I believe, was $370. Then after discount, I believe you were down to $330 per property for 2025. So that's just a quick snapshot of historical trends 2020 to 2025. We went over year-end adjustments already when Kat was talking about the bill. This slide here, this is actually my favorite slide. So we're going to get into some fun stuff here in the billing model presentation. So I say this is my favorite slide because this is your call for service slide. This is page 5 of your billing statement. So when you get your billing statement, go to page 5. This is the top portion of it. And what this is all of your calls for service in your municipality. Again, my favorite slide because, you know, as a council member, as a detachment commander or operations manager, somebody in my bureau, when I take a look at this, I can see what's happening in a community in a quick snapshot. So you'll see on the left-hand side of this, there's 9 groups. Those 9 groups include all of the billable calls for service. So if there's a false alarm call come in, let's just use that as an example, it would fall under an operational 2. So that would be one of the calls in there. If you had a question when you were sitting around having a meeting that, hey, there was a call for service that we had with OPP a couple of weeks ago. I wonder if we were billed for that. Well, if you can go in here into your subsequent pages after page 5, every single call that you were billed for is in those pages. So if the call's not there, you weren't billed for it. It probably fell under a provincial responsibility. So this is a great tool to know what you were billed for, what you weren't billed for based on these groups. So in those subsequent pages, these will be headings. You'll have a heading of drug possession, drugs, and you'll see the calls below them that are listed in those calls. You can see that there's a 4-year average used. Again, to get away from having, say last summer, there was a major event and there was a lot of police response, a lot of calls for service. If we do it on an average versus year to year, it avoids those peaks and valleys when it comes to budgeting. Because let's face it, you know, to budget, we saw it this year we were talking just a moment ago about the increase. When an increase happens, it really throws the budget for a loop. So having the 4-year average really helps, especially with calls for service, that we can keep consistency. You'll notice on the one column there in yellow, it says average time standard. So to dig a little deeper into this, when we look at, say, operational, you'll see the operational section. I'm going to use that because it's your biggest section. Across the province, completely normal. Everybody's operational section is the largest. And the reason for that is these are calls that police officers normally attend to that are non-criminal. Things like, I'll use an example of a neighbor dispute. You go to the call, you keep the peace, you do a report, document things, and you move on. So operational, a very high level of call that a police officer goes to. So if you look over to the column where it says average time standard, you'll see a time standard there of 3.9, I believe it is. So what they've done is all those calls in that category are analysts each year. They take all these calls that officers have responded to, and they find out how long it took them to create that, to finish that call, start to finish. And they get a time standard of that. So if the average is 3.9, that is what they use. So this is where we come back to that integrated service delivery and base service cost. This is how this all loops in. So when you drive down the road and you see a police vehicle stopped with a car pulled over and you're watching out of curiosity, and all of a sudden you see another police officer come, another one, maybe another one. Now you see like 6, 7 police officers there. You're like, wow, that's a lot of police response. This is going to cost us a lot of money, because that's what you would typically think if you were in a municipal police service, because you're paying per FTE or full-time employee. Well, with integrated service delivery and the billing model, you're not paying per officer's response. When that call is finished and it's closed, what you're paying for is that one call for service based on that time standard. So if you had a break and enter, for example, and at the end of the day, it was closed off, that's what you would pay for, is the time standard related to the break and enter. So neighbor dispute, 3.9 hours, that's what you were billed for, is that one call for service. So a little bit of clarity there. You'll also see things like drugs up there. And I always use drugs because we see it in the news all the time. It's so busy out there. We hear about the increase of fentanyl, the increase of opioids, all these things. And you say, wow, our drug count is way down. Well, again, this is a call for service. So we have a provincial side as well that's doing drug work. So you may not see a cost recovery for the drug work that's being done in your community because we have street crime units, we have provincial units doing projects, but a call for service that occurs, you will get billed, and you'll see the time standard on drugs is actually fairly high. And there's a reason for that, because when a frontline officer goes to a call for service for drugs, and this, when I'm saying drugs, drug trafficking, there's a lot of work to happen in that scenario. You know, back years ago when I was a young drug officer working in the city, we could do a drug call very fast. You know, we didn't have the technologies and things that we have today and the requirements that we have today. We have referral programs where when we have people, substance abuse, we have to do referrals. We have drug testing that we have to do. There's so many more steps. But the great thing with this is that when I talk about referrals, our provincial units can now step in and do longer investigations. So a lot of these radio calls or calls for service end up being a provincial responsibility. So once that officer is done with their initial investigation and it's turned over, you're no longer billed for that cost recovery. It goes on to that provincial side, and our internal provincial units work on those cases. So lots to talk about on this slide. I won't keep going because we could talk a lot about it, but you can see there all the different categories. Once this presentation's over, you can go back, you can pick up your billing statement, and you can look at that in depth and see what's available in there for information. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may have answered the question in that last bit. I just want to clarify. So when a scenario is actually a service call here, it ends up going to an actual court scenario. So if it's an offense that happened in Meaford, but it actually goes to provincial court, the officer time spent at court on that, is that now under the provincial umbrella? Or because it was related to a municipal offense, are we getting anything at? Or is that still tied to the because it was part of the original service?
It's all separate. So we don't link back cost recovery to original calls for service. So you'll have your calls for their call for service that you're billed for, and then when it comes to officer court time, if it's overtime, yes, it could be billed back to the municipality. It also depends on the circumstance too, and what capacity they're testifying in. So do you pay for some court costs? Yes, but that's also when Kat was talking about base services, when we were talking about the cost for police officers, that's covered off in that base service. So you don't see it as a separate line item on your bill. That's spread across the province in that original $189 base service, the bricks and mortar, keeping lights on, doors open, so to speak. So that would be in there. So if officer court time went up a lot in a year, we probably see that reflected in the base services more so than a call for services, completely separate. Thank you. 2024 frontline efficiency. So we got this slide from one of our units at General Headquarters. We have actually a whole section dedicated to efficiencies. So as I spoke in the beginning of this presentation, shared vision of public safety, we're in this together. We know calls for service are up across the province. So OPP, we are trying our best to help reduce those calls for service in other ways to avoid municipalities being billed for them. So I lost, oh, there we go. You can see here when we say frontline efficiencies, you know, what are our officers doing day to day when they're out there? And how can we free up their time from attending a call that, you know, could be dealt with in another manner? So you can see up here a really good example. You know, I use my own personal experience. We look at like 911 hang up calls. You know, when I was a young officer working the front line, I would get a 911 call. I would get dispatched to that, and there was no technology to know what's just a static line or a service issue or a way to figure that out through computers. I'd have to drive out to that area where we last had contact, check the area, and stay on that call until I could figure out what was going on. And sometimes that could eat up multiple hours of time, just in case there was somebody who had lost a 911 call and they needed help. But now with technology and the ways that we can confirm things, we're able to divert hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of officers' time. You can see up here the call diversions based on the pie charts there of what we've been able to divert from a call for service. So when that 911 call comes in now, we don't cost recovery for it because we don't send an officer out. So a great way for savings. We also have things like online reporting, which diverts from cost recovery as well. So if, let's just say cottage area, people lock their cottage up, they go home for the season, and they come back in the spring and they find there's been some damage to the property. There's no video cameras there. There's no evidentiary value to the small mischief that had happened. They don't have to have a police officer come out. They can actually go online and make that report online. So that diverts those things. We have in the background, we have efficiencies happening all the time. One of my favorites is mental health calls. We're doing so many things with partnerships in the communities, with nurses, the hospitals to help with the mental health crisis that we're facing in Ontario. And we actually have now working in our actually comm center, our communication center with our 911 dispatchers, crisis workers, people that we can change, put those calls right over to instead of having an officer go out. So if it's a situation where the call taker takes a call and we know it's not urgent, we know that they could be going into crisis, not in crisis, but they just really need somebody to speak to, we can actually put that call over immediately to somebody for them to speak to who can do a better analysis to make the determination if there's a requirement for police to go out or not. And these are experts, not just I wouldn't say just a police officer, but somebody who's actually in that field has an opportunity to talk to that person. So many great things. I won't belabor this because there's, again, on our website, I'm going to go to the next slide, and this is where I'll talk about, it kind of leads into this. Everything we've talked about here today is completely public information. So OPP, we really value transparency and being able to give information the best we can. And on opp.ca, there are so many tools and information. If you haven't explored it, I'd encourage you to, because this is just one example. opp.ca, if you go to municipal policing, I used our section on the website, but you'll see all the links on the one side. There's so many tools. Kat touched on webinars. We have calculators on there. So if you get your bill and you want to calculate calls for service differences, there's calculators for that. Everything is available. And what's a neat tool, I put this one, cost by municipality. When I first started doing this type of work, I was always wondering, hey, what do these municipalities pay? What's the difference here? What's the difference here? And the one neat one was cost by municipality. You'll see there, that's just a screen capture, but on the left, you'll see detachment. So you could put your detachment in there and it'll show you all the municipalities that fall under your detachment. It'll also show you all of their property counts, all their costs per property. All that information is completely accessible. So everything's in there, and it gives you multiple years, not just the two that are up there. It goes back 4 or 5 years. So you can see that data. Or if you're thinking to yourself, hey, we're a similar size municipality to somebody out in Eastern Ontario, I wonder what their cost per property is. You can go onto this tool and check that out. So lots of neat tools. This is just one of them. So a great resource to check out. And that's it. Questions? My partner, Lisa Rotar's name's on the bottom there, but you can reach me at the same number. We put that number there because we know what it's like when you call up a large corporation and you go through all those prompts. It's better just to call us directly. If anything comes up, please use that number and give us a shout. We're happy to answer any quick questions or send a resource where we can. And if there's any questions, happy to answer those now.
Happy to take calls from councils. We're happy to take calls from members of the public. We're open for exchange of information, and we're also happy to get you to additional resources. We understand also it's a lot of information. Sometimes we usually get some phone calls after, just after digesting the information for a little while.
Going once, going twice. Looks like we're satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to come here today to speak with you all. We look forward to hearing from you and coming out anytime you would like a presentation, anytime we can support the detachment to clarify what we're doing on the cost recovery side of the house. So thank you very much for your time and energy today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
We're going to move on to announcements on this side of the horseshoe. Do we have any announcements? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to share some very recent news that just came out late this morning on behalf of Grey County. For the third year in a row, Grey County has been named one of the world's Smart 21 communities by the Intelligent Communities Forum. This competition recognizes communities that embrace technology to realize economic, social, and cultural growth. So that is something our economic development staff at Grey County in particular have been working very hard on. And so we're very proud to be recognized as, again, a Smart 21 community in Grey County.
Other announcements, Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, and a very important announcement. On Sunday, March 16th, that's coming up pretty soon, from 9 in the morning until 12 noon, the Meaford Curling Club is presenting a St. Patty's pancake breakfast. Sounds very good. The price tag on it is $10, and where can you get a breakfast for $10 in today's world? It's a fundraiser, and the proceeds are going to the new ice refrigeration machine that's needed at the curling club. Thank you.
Any other announcements on our side of the horseshoe? Going over to staff, do we have anything today at all?
Through you, Mayor Kentner, we have no.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to public participation. Members of the public are encouraged to provide council with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released and will be limited to 10 minutes. If a member of the public wishes to make a deputation on items on the council agenda or to ask a public question of council, they may do so either in person at the council chambers or remotely via Zoom, phone, or internet. Members of the public wishing to make a deputation or ask a public question must register in advance with legislative services by 10 in the morning on the day of the meeting. And you can do that by contacting clerk@meaford.ca or calling 519-538-1060, extension 1110. Email will be sent to those who do register with information on how to get into the meeting. The public can watch this meeting live via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel, www.meaford.ca/YouTube. So we do have a presentation today. I think we have two, in fact. And the first is with J.D. Moffat of the Meaford Chamber of Commerce to talk about the strategic plan. Welcome, J.D. Very often you're welcoming me to the microphone, and this time I'm welcoming you.
There we go. Leave it to me to not know how to run a microphone. They're all different though, I can tell you. Thank you for having me here this afternoon. I come to you as the new president of the Meaford Chamber of Commerce. One of many changes and implementations we're wanting to make as we move forward from a year of I don't want to say chaos, but a year of a little bit of distance and a year of some confusion, but certainly a year that had some bright spots regarding the chamber, and a year that's helped us to rediscover the energy within that chamber, moving forward to doing hopefully some good things with and for the community as we move forward. You will have received a couple of detailed documents that I hope you went over the last couple of weeks regarding our detailed 3-year plan regarding our appeal for budget. And my presentation today accompanies that. It's very brief, and hopefully will allow for a nice bit of time for questions and answers after I finish it. So you need my clicker. Another device. Very good. The executive summary proposes what I've just mentioned, touched upon, is a brand new idea, taking on some of the great old ideas of the chamber and moving forward with a fresh new vision for that chamber, revitalized sense of purpose, renewed energy from the members of the chamber and the directors within that chamber as well. some new ideas, a real sense of collaboration that in fact is tying to one of our core principles to collaborate. If any organization within the community, especially if it's connected to business, has a concept, has an idea, needs bodies, needs energy, needs resources, that's where we want to be as a Chamber of Commerce to represent them for sure. If it represents downtown revitalization, any kind of organizational development or economic development. We also have a department where we're hoping to put resources into youth mentorship, knowing that the next great chamber is out there waiting to be mentored and encouraged and brought up through the channels properly, so that we can get a sense of their idea of what great business would look like in the future, and they can hopefully draw from the experience and the tenure of a great chamber past to help solidify those channels. Focus, of course, is economic growth. We want to see businesses do better in the community, in the municipality. Trust building when it comes to knowing what the spirit of this chamber has been about, and innovation moving forward, because we know times are different, new ideas are needed, new ways of doing old things sometimes is required. We've revitalized and focused on our vision and mission, as any nonprofit organization would have. And those are our two main statements. Our mission statement, to champion Meaford's economic development and support business, foster entrepreneurship, build strong community connections that enhance the quality of life and sustain local prosperity. And as well, our vision to establish the chamber as the cornerstone of all those initiatives, to be a great business in itself, and to showcase great businesses throughout not just the downtown core, but throughout the municipality, and grow a social ecosystem while doing so. A great sense of networking and stewardship and togetherness, and seeing our fellow businesses succeed to help us succeed as well, and to build a good vibrant community in doing so. Priorities of our strategies moving forward include growing our membership services. We know that has faltered over the last year. It's right at the top of what we're wanting to do. It's probably our number one priority, is to re-engage with the business community, to let our current members know that things haven't gone swimmingly in the last year or so, and that they are going to go very well moving forward with, again, even some of the old cast of characters within our chamber, but revitalized and refocused with a stronger executive, and again, a renewed sense of energy with our existing directors. Enhancing programming and events, some of the great ideas that have happened with chambers years past, plus some new ideas moving forward. Building sustainable funding models and fostering communication and engagement, being easily found, easily reached, easily seen, easily met up with, to talk to, and to grow relationships, to address concerns, etc. When we talk about strengthening membership services, we want to make sure that they have a clearer idea of the value of a good chamber, the actual deliverables that we're preparing to put together, and we'll make sure that they see and feel firsthand as we address their concerns. We also want to make sure we're a great marketer for businesses in this municipality, a great advertiser, if you will, a great cheerleader that way. Advocacy, networking, resource hubs, hoping to provide them with some of the resources that we can have, being connected provincially to the Chamber of Commerce, and having good things for them to utilize moving forward, and to, of course, build trust through consistent support. We also want to revitalize and support flagship events and locations. I see the apple, picture of the apple here on the wall. That's a big part of what we want to make sure is a landmark moving forward, that a lot more things are seen happening at that apple. A lot more events are centered around the apple, as it's in the center of the downtown core, and things of that nature, so that businesses and community also know what we're up to and where it's happening. One of our initiatives as well as to sustain a consistent office manager, which has been a part of the confusion over the last several years. We've had several attempted that position, and we're currently in the means of putting together an office manager to again have something consistent at the office, have the office open consistently, and have accessibility from the community. To build sustainable funding models is to build a new funding plan throughout the calendar year to put together events and things that we know are going to be revenue generators for the chamber, but also representative of the businesses that we're hoping to work with, and provide certain sponsorship opportunities. When we talk about Summerfest, we talk about Dragons, more opportunities for local businesses to be seen and heard at those events, loud and proud, and with great connection to the chamber, endorsement from the chamber, so that they see value in the groups of people that are attending these events to know that they're around as well as good businesses. When we talk about fostering communication and engagement, again, it's about consistent outreach to our members. We're going to lead by example just by seeing that office open consistently. It'll mean to businesses that it's available, and the consistency of that, I think, will be impactful for businesses to know if they need support, they need help, they need a cup of coffee, they need a photocopy, that these things are readily and easily available on a consistent basis through that chamber office. And to build our reputation in the community by doing so. We know it had been strong, and we know there have been moments of darkness over the last year or so, and we want to rebuild that so that there's great light when it comes to the chamber. When we talk about the chamber, it's about collaborations and partnerships, and we've already been in discussion with a couple of organizations when we talk about the spirit of what Main Street was about at one point, and certainly what Downtown Meaford, the organization, is about. We are extending every resource that we have in wanting to work in a collaborative nature with them, so that whatever they are energized to do, we want to support, whether it's with bodies on hand, or if it's resources of any other sort, even just an office space to be able to utilize to have their organizational meetings. We want to have all those things available. That's all a good chamber, I think, does, is on top of the advocacy is the collaboration. You know, we want to support good business. We want those businesses to utilize us in any way that they think they need, and we want to support them. And with that, of course, a unified vision for a thriving downtown core, which, you know, our experience over the last winter is that the word is that it's been a difficult winter, and we want to make it into a fantastic spring if possible, and moving forward, of course. The role of the board and the volunteers is to reactivate these board members and define roles for the directors. We are proposing a sort of a committee and subcommittee plan where there'll be executive members that will then be in charge of subcommittees. So the Meaford Dragons will have a director who's in charge of Dragons, report to the chamber, but then run a subcommittee moving forward to singularly handle these events. With that, it's a 3-year plan that we proposed. Year 1 to lay the foundation, reform the image that we think a good chamber is all about, secure the funding to do so. Year 2 is to build momentum on the good things that came out of year 1, some of the good things that we know have happened from years past, and move forward. And then in year 3, deliver the impact, measure that success, become self-sustainable in doing so as a chamber. Simple plans for our call to action: open and keep the office open in a regular basis as much as possible, support the strategic plans implementation, and create a brighter future for Meaford in doing so. We, as a chamber, as a volunteer board, we've got time and energy that we're glad to put into the chamber as we always have. It's nice if we could see some return on the streets with that, some actual deliverable impact through our members, and we think we'll get that reflection. Any questions at all?
Sure. I just like to say, we have so much valued the vital contributions of the chamber for literally decades in Meaford, and we just hope to see this, return as quickly as possible. So let's go around the horseshoe here with questions and suggestions. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and it's so great to see you here in front of us today, JD, and congratulations on becoming President Moffat.
Thank you.
No, we really appreciate you stepping up.
Sounds
I mean,
strange.
coming out of that year of transition, as you
Yeah,
spoke to, and
yeah.
landing in such a positive place is just so positive. Your strategic plan is professional and aggressive and proactive, and I really like it. It makes me happy. I guess it's 2011. I was president, so I'm part of the old guard.
Right.
To 2014, and it's just wonderful to see, the chamber back on its feet again. So a big congratulations for that. And I'm glad to see the word advocacy in here because in my mind, that's such an important role for the chamber. We'd like to see you in front of us as often as you feel it's necessary and talk to us about the positions of business, whether it has to do with parking or snow clearing or anything at all that's impacting businesses. We want to know about it. So don't be a stranger. Come
Very
and,
good. Promise I will. Okay. Or I won't be a stranger.
No, that's great, JG. As I always say, the chamber gets in your blood, and I know it's still in my blood, and I can hear from the passion in your voice that it's in your blood. So just have a great term as president of our Meaford Chamber of
Thank you.
Commerce.
Well, as a chamber board member, I've been there 7 years, and I was very happy to sit possibly in the background, available at the ready whenever a task was needed, a job, an execution needed to happen. And my wife said at one point, it's time to step up or step out. I put in some good time with the chamber, so I surprised her and stepped up. So here we are, ready and renewed. Yes, exactly.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. JD, I can hear the passion, the excitement in your voice. I remember on the 17th of Sawgrass at Wooden Sticks, I seen it in your face and in your voice. And I can see it now, and I know the chamber is in good hands. So congratulations, and
Thank you.
let us help you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, JD, for coming and presenting today. I do have one question. We're coming off the 150th anniversary, which I think was a great success for the municipality, and there were a lot of volunteers came forward to the various committees. To me, I think it's great. You've got a great vision here. It's an ambitious plan. I just wondering, JD, can you get the foot soldiers to put this together? That's got to be one of your biggest challenges. Do you feel confident that you can you can get these recruits and put this plan into into action?
Yeah, that's a good question, Councillor Greenfield. Just in some of the research, the R&D that we've done preceding even this meeting this afternoon, we're getting a sense, just like our chamber directors themselves, that there was a level of energy that was sort of we were sitting with the chamber, and that has been kicked up with the idea of a lot of newness, even with, like I say, a lot of the same chamber directors, just a sense of collaboration with the businesses. We're getting feedback from some of the feedback I've gotten from businesses has not been positive, even if it's been towards the chamber, and that's okay. The idea that however it was in some ways is not how it will be. And that sort of promise of performance moving forward, I think that's invigorated people a little bit. My involvement with the Scarecrow Committee as well, notwithstanding, I think there's still a groundswell of energetic individuals that want to be involved. I realize that's a finite number in any municipality, because those that we have talked to that are the most eager are also the most taxed on all levels when it comes to the time that's asked of them to support other businesses, to volunteer. But I sense a willingness, and that'll be what we're going to research and find. But my sense is that we'll have the bodies needed as long as we don't over ask of them. So it'll be on a project by project basis likely, and that kind of thing.
A supplementary?
Follow up.
Your worship, thanks, JD, and certainly all the best here. I think it's also a time that our municipality, our municipal council has to maybe rise to a little higher level when it comes to being involved with the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm not talking about strictly financial, but just our advocacy, our promotion of the Chamber of Commerce. We don't know what this business to the south of us is going to bring, but it's quite possible that it's going to have a huge effect on our local economy. And if there ever was a time that we need to pull together and try to do the very best for everybody's interest, I think that time has come.
Yeah, I agree. I think the country's becoming a lot more unified. Speaking just before the meeting, actually, that it's certainly put us all on the same team that way, thinking the same way, and I think we'll get that locally as well. And we've had shop local initiatives put in place, not just with Chamber, but in general for years. But I hear that ringing true and reaching a lot of ears a little differently this time around, that it's so important to shop local, to support local, live local. We're right here. It's just so easy to reach out and get that item as opposed to the ways we might have done it in the past. So, and we know we're supporting our family, our friends, our neighbors in doing that. So I think we're at a good time that way.
Councillor Yurg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll echo, thank you, JD, for coming and making the presentation. Everybody's used the word passion. It's obviously coming through. I'll also echo Deputy Mayor, as I had the privilege of being the president, ended up stepping down from that to do this. So I can totally appreciate your commitment. You and I were on the board for a number of years, and thank you for that. It was really interesting coming out of time, because we came out of COVID, and that was obviously difficult. I was on task force for that too, and it was really interesting trying to coalesce businesses with that. Really nice to hear you reaching out to groups like Meaford Downtown to kind of get them involved, because I think they've got a lot of good ideas. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. Two questions. One is, I'm wondering, how many people do you have on the board now? And secondly, are you in this strategic plan? I know you've got a number of things that you're wanting to do. Are the after fives still part of that initiative? Because I know in Blue Mountains, the after sixes are hugely successful, popular. They work really well. And I know that coming through the flux we've been to, it would be nice to see that kind of brought back from the networking position that provides, and just the visibility as well. I think that is even more vital, because it gives people a chance to get together and see tangibly what's happening. So I'm just curious about those two things.
Well, the new chamber believes what I believe too, that all the great ideas that have happened with chambers of commerce prior to this edition have to be implemented again, even if they're rethought as far as how the dynamic works. After five is absolutely one of them. We know that there's great success with the after six in the town of the Blue Mountains Chamber. And we're trying to figure out why that is in comparison to, not that the Meaford after fives haven't been successful. There's just a different operating dynamic that we're trying to put our finger on. And we'll get that figured out as well. But the idea of the after five, that's absolutely will happen. Yeah, that's a big plan, big part of our plan. Oh, 9 members. Well, we've just received an application this afternoon.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, JD, thank you very much for your presentation. And as a past board member, I think you and myself and Councillor Uri were probably all on the board within the same year.
I kind of think so, yeah.
So, but appreciate you stepping up in the leadership role. And some of the changes that you guys had implemented last year were really creative with regards to the after five, where you had the primary host and then you had the co-host. And I thought that was great. So please keep that up. When we look at the chamber, obviously chamber is to support businesses within the municipality. And I remember from my experience that one of the challenges was being able to connect with rural businesses and being able to support rural. And we did have some after fives that were in rural Meaford, and those were wonderful. But my question is sort of with the new strategic plan, how does the chamber plan to connect with rural businesses to help grow membership, help get them involved? Because there are more rural businesses in Meaford than there are urban.
Yeah.
So that's one question. And I do like the fact that the chamber is adopting some of the Main Street principles. But of course, Main Street's primary goal is to focus on the downtown core. So I just want to know, how would you use those principles to help support rural businesses within the municipality? Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. I think a key is to make sure that rural businesses know that they are part of what we're thinking about. And we might need to even reach out specifically to that community to say, we'd love you on board as much as any core downtown business. You have a thriving business, a farm market, a storefront within the front of your house that's outside of town. We certainly want to make sure that you're recognized. We'll give them every opportunity to do that. Our digital approach will be much greater than it's been. We've got, just by happenstance, we've got 2 Facebook groups that are hugely impactful just because of the number of followers. And our approach is going to be very aggressive on both those channels, and to reach out specifically to the rural community to say, we want you. We'd love to have you aboard. And in fact, it likely involve some initiatives that will potentially embrace just those businesses as an invitation to join chamber, to be a part of what we're talking about. Because when we talk about business, it's got to be widespread. I love many of the initiatives of downtown Meaford, but even in the name itself, we want to make sure that the chamber's concept is Meaford Downtown Plus, uptown, out of town. It all has to be part of the plans and the activities and some of the events that we're thinking of.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you again. Thanks for the answer, JD. I appreciate that. Now, I also remember when I was on the board, we would regularly have a member of council sitting in on the meetings. It's the first time I met Councillor Bell, and I thought, this guy's pretty cool. He's wearing a leather jacket to the to the meeting. So, but in any case, I want to know, is that something that the chamber would still like to see? And if that is, I'm sure you get plenty of support around the table here. But further to that, how can the chamber and the municipality collaborate effectively so we can build a strong, mutually beneficial partnership going down the road? How does that factor into the strategic plan?
Yes, we would love to have someone from council be a part of our regular chamber meetings. Simple answer on that. We can't insist on that, but we want that. We would love to have that. And secondly, it's likely targeted to an event. If we were to collaborate on, say, recognizing Volunteer Week, if we were to tie that into our regular community awards, but perhaps that there's an opportunity there to sort of work together on a project, and with that start to feel better about an overall collaboration type of plan. But I think it could be as simple as us letting you know what's coming up next on our end, and if you feel like there's a real channel that the council can be involved in, then our doors are wide open, and vice versa.
We had a education session last week with our integrity commissioner. And I felt that we got a clear message that it is certainly no problem to send a member on a rotating basis, a member of council to meet with the chamber and sit in on their meeting. I think it's I participated in that too and found it very, very useful. Good
It'd be
exchange.
vital for them, you to know what we're up to on a month-to-month basis, and that transparency back and forth. If you can lend any words of wisdom as we move ahead on an initiative, on a project, then that's something we can get firsthand at those meetings.
Councillor Urigan.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just, yeah, with your Facebook page, the Meaford Chamber of Commerce, I see right now it's about 1,500 followers. I know the Meaford community news and events, it has about 11,000, which in municipality of 11.5, that's pretty good. Is Chamber still administering that? I thought they were.
Those are the two Facebook channels that
Yeah.
I speak of.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't know
Yeah.
because it doesn't literally say Meaford Chamber of Commerce. And I think that's probably somehow that needs to be a little bit more known, because if I go to Meaford Chamber of Commerce, see 1,500, you go to that and it's 11. And people don't know that it's actually still chamber disseminating, good information and trying to get that out there. So somehow I know it, but I think a lot of people out there really
Yeah.
need to be made aware that that is an avenue of that people can utilize, but moreover, where that's coming from.
Yeah, for sure. That's part of our plan too.
Thank you very much, JD. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we have another presentation this afternoon. I'd like to invite Susan Jones, event organizer, and Dr. Jeff Moran of Docs on Ice to the microphone. And thank you for your patience today. We're looking forward very much to your presentation as well.
Thank you very much, Council, for having us here today. Dr. Moran just communicated with me. I think he's pretty full of patience. I don't know how you connect with him via Zoom. He was supposed to join us. Does somebody?
Yeah, we can do that.
He's here? Dr. Moran?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Dr. Moran, please just introduce yourself, or I will, or we could just get right into this, to the presentation. I know you're very time limited.
If you can hear me, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine, Doctor. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want me just to proceed? I'm sorry, I don't seem to have any video.
Oh, he needs that too.
Do you have the presentation?
I can see the presentation on the screen, yes.
Then you can just walk us through it.
Okay.
Susan is going to do the clicking at this end.
Okay, perfect. We can go, actually, Susan, if you want to go to the next slide. While we're doing that, I'm a family physician here in Collingwood for 35 plus years. Lots of patients from the Meaford Thornbury side as well. And we had actually done this tournament previously in 2010. Meaford was involved in the tournament at that year. Susan, can you go to the third slide or?
Right now it says Ontario Doctors Hockey Tournament.
Yep,
Carry
that's
on.
the one. Oh, sorry. It keeps going back to just my name. It was there.
This is the introduction of what
Yep.
Docs on Ice is.
Okay, I can see that slide. Right, so I've put my name forward to chair this tournament again in April of 2026. This will be the 43rd year for the tournament. It's an annual event typically in the spring, and it rotates around the province. Typically about 3 years advance to sort of get it organized, because we're around 65 to 70 teams for next year. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 plus doctors, including medical residents and medical students. We can skip that history slide maybe, Susan, and go to, let's see. Sorry, I just can't see what slide you guys are looking at there.
The information slide.
Perfect. Okay. So as I said, this tournament has rotated throughout the province. Typically, we've been limited to larger centers because of the number of ice surfaces that we need. But we were able to pull it off in 2010 by just stretching it across the whole region. Tournaments well attended. We've traditionally got lots of donors and sponsors involved to help with the fundraising aspect of it, as we do have a charity component. So all proceeds typically have gone to charity. We hosted it in 2010, as I mentioned, and we raised over 250,000 for the hospital here. And again, it was a regional activity, and we had lots of support from all the municipalities, which was great. We're targeting April 10 and 11 of 2026. Next slide is just talking about the arenas that we're hoping will support the event. So Collingwood, Wasaga, Thornbury, Meaford, Stayner, possibly Creemore. We're just trying to decide how many ice surfaces we need as a minimum. The tournament that we're considering, as I say, a large number of physicians. And I think the emphasis we want to put on this today for council is that this is a recruitment opportunity. Originally, I sort of framed this as being, or at least targeting medical students and the residents that are playing in the tournament. However, interestingly, we've got 3 physicians who've come to our region, 2 in Collingwood and 1 in Stayner, who are 45 and over. In other words, middle of their careers, picked up and moved to this area. So I think on a recruitment basis, you never know. I think I can leave it there and answer questions.
Sure, we have some. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Dr. Moran, for your presentation, and Susan for being here with us today. This is an exciting opportunity for us here in Meaford to be part of this program, and I'm just wondering if I can ask you to speak a little bit more in depth as to the potential recruitment opportunities. Would we, as examples from council or members of our staff, I mean, could we have access to medical students to have an opportunity to speak with them, to promote Meaford, to provide them with welcome packages or anything of that nature?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we, again, in 2010, we had a doctor shortage then, and unfortunately that's worsened over the number of years since that tournament. So what we had done then, and what I would anticipate doing, is allowing each community to be visible in the arena. It's all day Friday and all day Saturday are the schedules, and really provide your own unique opportunity to showcase the community, whether that's some people there answering questions. In 2010, Meaford actually offered to pay for people to stay on the Saturday evening and then do a tour of the community on the Sunday. And we did an event strictly for the medical students, which was about, I'm going to say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 75 students. And we provided a free dinner for them at Copper Blues in the village at Blue Mountain. We had several mayors present and other councillors were attending that event. And we really just used that evening as a showcasing opportunity as for whoever wanted to get involved. So we don't have any fixed agenda or ideas around how this would look for Meaford. We're open to any ideas, suggestions, and happy to help from our standpoint as the organizers of the tournament.
I'm going to call on Councillor Urick now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation, Jeff. That's great. It's really great news. Just wondering, coincidentally, we happen to have in our audience here, we have Vince Rogers, who's the executive director of our Meaford Hospital Foundation. So I'm just, when do you think you'll kind of, with our, obviously, I guess you're gleaning, you're going to have our support when you're going to kind of make those decisions, and just wondering how can our own hospital foundation kind of be our liaison? Obviously, they're going to be front and center of a lot of this, so how they can kind of be in touch and part and parcel of this coordination or information moving forward.
Right. So we're certainly open to being available at any time, phone calls, text, email, with those folks or whoever else might be involved. Susan Jones, who's there with you now, is our event planner. And so Susan will be our main contact person. We're meeting regularly, and we have been working on this now for almost a year. And as we get the next tournament, which is in 3 weeks, under our belts, we'll be meeting regularly, and there'll be a committee, I think, that will be set up specifically around that question. So we would be happy on that committee to have, all of the various municipalities and work together to see how this would look at each arena, and just brainstorm how it goes. So I think whoever would want to attend would be welcome to come to our meetings.
Any questions around the horseshoe? Okay. Dr. Moran, thank you so much for the presentation. I think we're all excited about it, and I know that we're going to be talking about logistics and seeing, how we can tie in for sure. So there's nothing else. And Susan, thank you. Maybe could you leave your coordinates with perhaps the clerk there so that we can get back to you to discuss things further?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for
appreciate that very
allowing us
much.
to present this today.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone, for your time.
And thank you for yours today.
Cheers.
We have no deputations. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I did have an inquiry today. I wanted to ask staff just a little bit further information about Trowbridge Street. I know we talked about this during the budget, and we agreed to postpone construction essentially this year, but I've had a few businesses asking, and perhaps President Meaford has as well, just wondering what's happening this year, what they should be prepared for. And I just wondered if we could have an update on that, and if there could possibly be a communication prepared that could go out perhaps through the Chamber of Commerce to the downtown businesses so that they can recognize what's happening this year and start to prepare for what I'll call a big dig next year.
Through your Mayor Kentner to Deputy Mayor Keaveney, I did have a chance to ask. So currently it's mainly prep work. We're still working with the engineers. And it could be that the hydro poles will be moved this year. We're not sure. But as soon as we find that out, we can work with the chamber, and we'll also do our own communications out and hopefully give you a better idea what's going on.
Any other questions from our side of the horseshoe? Any from your side, staff? Okay, thank you. There's nothing on our consent agenda. We do have a an item for consideration. It's a recommendation, be it resolved that bylaw 2025-10, being a bylaw to remove a holding H5 symbol from the lands at 12 Collingwood Street East in the municipality of Meaford, be taken as read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Greenfield and seconded by Councillor Bartley. Discussion on this. I'm going to start by saying that this is a major project and an important one for downtown Meaford. Did you want to speak to it, Denise? I appreciate that.
Thanks, Your Worship. I don't really have a lot to say. I worked really hard with the applicant through the appeal process. And I think it was a very positive last couple of weeks at the end where we were really burning through all of the kind of agreements and drawings and things like that. So I think everyone's satisfied with where things landed. And they've moved very quickly since then. So everything's in place now to pass them off to building. I believe they're already working through some of their building permit process. So they're working with building now on their cloud permit application.
Could you just maybe summarize for those watching today what this project entails? Because it's not small potatoes.
Yes, thanks for that, Your Worship. So the property is currently vacant. Everyone who's been around for more than 5 years will probably remember some buildings there. I believe they were torn down after 2021. There was 4 houses there, and there were some other buildings there previous to that. The Huron Bay Co-op used to be located on the one portion of the property. So we've been anticipating the redevelopment of this parcel for some time. The lands were rezoned in 2022, I think the report says. I don't have it up in front of me right now. I accidentally closed my report, so I'm guessing, I'm going by memory. And so it was rezoned to allow a redevelopment of the site to a commercial and residential use, but some standalone townhouses that would be set up to be potentially live-work units. So someone could buy one of these townhouses and put in a home office that had basically a storefront right out into what looks like sort of a nice little commercial area that could, et cetera, that would also lead you through to McCarroll Park. So that townhouse section would be kind of separate from the main commercial building or the other commercial building on the west side, which would be a sort of a standalone commercial storefronts with apartments above. And they did scale it back a little bit from the original proposal. It's now 26 units. And then the commercial as well. And it's a really unusual and exciting project for us. So like I said, it has a walkway that would be developed when they do the townhouses that would link the property through to McCarroll Park to provide a bit of an access there. I think that's about it, but it is an interesting project. It does have surface parking, so it doesn't have underground parking, but it is a fairly lower density than the original proposal. If everyone remembers way back, there was a much bigger apartment building proposed there, and that it had a little bit of a struggle to get all those units on the property. And like I said, it's been in the report, it's been amalgamated now as one parcel. They've done pretty much everything they need to do to move forward now into the building phase. We have the agreement signed and it's in good shape now. So I'm pretty pleased with how that ended up coming together.
I think what struck me and members of the Heritage Committee on this project was that these are tough times, and to be able to have a storefront and have your house under one mortgage is a pretty exciting option. And it's also going to be an important infill for downtown Meaford. And I think just add a lot to our municipality in terms of its appeal. Other Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't know if the question can be answered. Has this project been assigned sewage capacity? And I'm being told that the pipe carrying the sewage across the river is at capacity. How are we going to get sewage from the highway development and this development across the river?
So through you, Your Worship, I'm not sure specifically about the capacity through that specific pipe that we're talking about. This project was reviewed by our engineer. It went through our normal DRT process at the beginning, before it ended up through the appeal. And so I'm not aware of anything restricting it from going forward. It's not a significantly large project, although we call it a significant project. Being its own, like I said, it's 26 units. But my understanding is the capacity is there. It is allocated now because once we've entered into the agreement, it freezes them with some allocation until there is a sunset clause in there of 3 years, but then they don't move forward, then we would be able to take that allocation back. You might remember a few months ago, the Planning Act did change to allow us to, puts it a little bit more teeth in there to allow us to have those sunset clauses to take back allocation if people don't move forward with their project. And so we've been building those into the agreement. So I don't know the specifics on the sewage capacity of the pipe that we're talking about. So I'm not sure. You mean the pipe that's, I'm just thinking crossing the bridge on Bridge Street or that other spot over
It goes up
kind of
to
by the
river.
Meaford Social?
It goes under the river by Meaford Social, yes.
Yeah. I'm not aware of anything restricting it in this case. So I'm not sure where that information came from to Counselor Bartley, but I mean, I'm happy to look into it further and provide information back. I don't have that anything further in front of me at the moment.
And thank you. I got it from a reliable source and I want to know if there's truth to it and do we have a plan?
Other questions, or you ready to vote on this? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We're going to move into committee of the whole next. I wondered, would you like a brief recess? We've been sitting for an hour and a half. Maybe just declare a 5-minute recess here. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think we were a little more than 5 minutes, but we usually get involved in a good conversation with some of the people in our gallery. So I'm moving on to our committee of the whole session, and we need a mover and seconder to do that. Councillor Bell and Deputy Mayor Keaveney. Recommendation being that we move into committee of the whole at 2:47 p.m. The first item on the agenda is the recommendation is that Committee of the Whole receive report COM 2025-01 TC Energy Project Internal Working Group Update for information purposes. Mover and seconder, Councillor Urick and Councillor Greenfield. All in favor? Right? No, sorry, I beg your pardon. No, I'm in favor of discussing it. We need to discuss it, of course. Yeah, no, go right ahead. Do you want to be first, Councillor Porter?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry for jumping the gun there.
Oh, no,
Guys.
no problem.
So my question is, the only thing I wanted to bring up for discussion here would be in terms of the quarterly reports. Based on the size and the scale of this project, and even though things may not have been moving all that fast up until now, things will start moving very fast. So in my opinion, I would like to see monthly reports if possible. I know PSAC doesn't meet often enough to provide comments for monthly reports, but I still feel that council should be apprised on a monthly basis of things that are happening with regards to this project. So I'll just leave that out to the table for discussion, but if that is something where we do have some support, I would move to make an amendment for monthly reporting as opposed to quarterly.
Okay, discussion of that. Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. I'm really glad to see this on here, that it hasn't been forgotten. And I hate to do this, but I'm going to ask to defer this. The makeup is all going to change in the next couple of weeks, as far as I can see. It says interim CAO, or we're going to have a CAO possibly. The acting clerk is going to change. I think the group is going to change that we are going to pass today. And I don't like not having a member of council on the committee, open for discussion, but I think we're premature in passing this today.
And I'm assuming you would bring a motion forward if,
That was my motion, is to
Yeah.
defer this.
sorry, clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, we are not asking council for any decision. It's just an information report, so there wouldn't be anything to defer. But I do understand your point about there's going to be some staff changes. When we had gotten together with this internal working group, we definitely had that in mind. It says acting clerk, but whoever takes on the clerk position will fill that. It says interim CAO, but then whoever takes on the permanent CAO will sit in that seat. So we didn't put names, we put positions, and the report kind of talks about we've gotten together and created this group to accommodate those shifts. We've made the group bigger so that when we do have new staff coming in, we can kind of fill each other in and just keep the project moving.
So having said that, because we're not asking for direction, I withdraw the motion. I still think a councillor or two should be on this group. What are the rest of council's thoughts?
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the comments from Councillor Bartley. In a prior working group, both the mayor and myself were present at these meetings. My understanding is that staff formed this group because these particular staff members hadn't been involved in any communications, et cetera, with TC Energy, so they wanted to kind of get caught up. Is, as I say, my understanding of why the internal group was formed. So again, I think once we have a new CAO in place, there may be discussion about, whether this continues as is or is changed or what that may look like. So I'm kind of content to leave it until then. I did have a question though, with regards to the consultants. The report speaks to the internal group meeting with Strategy Corp and with Ainley. So I'm just curious to kind of know our status with those two particular groups at this moment, because I think they were kind of put on hold more or less for the past few months while TC was waiting for word from the province. So I just wanted to know if we're kind of back in the same kind of engagement that we were prior to, or are they still kind of on the sidelines, or just where are we in terms of working with Strategy Corp and Ainley at this point?
Through you, Mayor Kettner, to Deputy Mayor Keaveney. Currently, we've just reached out just to talk to them to see what they were working on per se, because you have to realize none of us were involved previously. So currently, we've just been kind of gathering information as we go. And to Councillor Forder's point, if we have more information on a more frequent basis, we'll just bring it forward to you.
Sorry, Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So on the conversation that's just happened about council or council's involvement with this group, I'm just going to reflect on at the committee of the whole on Deputy Mayor Keaveney's motion. I personally felt that quite clearly I was in the dark. I was outside of the information realm. What I would like to see when this group is functioning, that all members of council are given the same information from that working group. And if that means we have to go to the office to pick up a package that tells us something to keep it secure, if it's open, really open, then to send it to us. But upon reflection of that, I felt that I was out of the loop. And to have even yourself, Mr. Mayor, or the Deputy Mayor, keenly involved with the group, I still reflect personally that I felt I was sidelined. And that might not be nice words, but that was my take on that. And having that group working, I think that when it does function, that its functionality then should be promoted to all members of council virtually simultaneously, if we can do that. That's the only thing I would say about the comment about having members of council on it. That's all.
And I can tell you how much, I identify with that, because this group would take the deputy mayor and I out of the picture entirely. And I don't regard that as satisfactory either. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, in response to Councillor Bell, I know what's noted here for information that my motion was brought forward, but the internal working group, I had no conversation with the internal working group about this motion. I take full responsibility for bringing the motion to council. I just didn't want you to think that there'd been conversation with the internal working group that was brought to me and then a motion was created. That did not happen at all. There was no conversation of that nature, and I take full responsibility for the motion.
Sorry, Denise, you wanted to make a point too.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I hate to step in, I don't want to step on anyone else's toes either, but I think my point would just be that the purpose of this internal group was so that we could provide some direction to the staff that had been working on some of the things, even paying invoices and arranging meetings and things like that, who haven't had anybody to really work with because there was no one here anymore. So I think we actually believed, I know it may sound hard to believe, that this internal working group would take the place of what the CAO had been doing, not to take the place of the former internal working group that included the mayor, deputy mayor, CAO, director of development services, whatever that was there before from the previous motion. We were actually hoping that we could put all our heads together to pull in all the things that may have happened with no one really being aware of it anymore, because we no longer had a CAO here and the staff that had been working on things weren't here either. So we wanted to be play a bit of catch up. So it wasn't to cut anybody out. It's actually to pull all the sort of the administrative things together so that when we do reform that group, we have something to hand over, not just like, oh, we just dropped the ball for 10 months or something like that. If that makes sense. I know it sounds like a lot of people, but it really did take that many people for our heads to get wrapped around it. I mean, they're nodding away. We were all completely in the dark about this project before. We didn't really have a lot to do with it. And so we were taking all of our personal expertise or professional expertises together to try to figure out what are the next steps. Because our hope was to be able to pass this off to the new CAO in a decent shape so that we can say, this is what's going on. Here's the things that we think are missing or need to be done. Here's the priority areas. And then that group would reform, I think, probably in a similar form to how it was before. But with so many people missing, we actually were just trying to fill the staff component, not the whole thing. It is a little confusing. And as we were writing the report, we were kind of wondering how to structure it as well. And so we're just playing catch up right now and to make sure that the information is available for council, what's going on with the consultants is available to provide updates about, and that we know what the next steps will be for when that CAO role is filled and they're in their desk so that we can hand it over. Does that make sense? Did I say that correctly? Thank you.
And thanks for clarifying it for us too. That's fine. Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm very much in favor of setting up this staff group. I really do hope that perhaps it might inspire our friends at TC Energy to come forward with a little bit more information about their project. We've had this out there now for, I guess, almost 6 years, and initially we were told that TC wanted to pump water up out of Georgian Bay, up over the old ski hill, and empty it into a big reservoir up near the training center buildings. And to date, that's about as far as we've got with information from TC Energy. So I'm hoping maybe if our staff would do a little bit of door knocking, and they can find out a little bit more information and keep us at council apprised. If indeed this project goes ahead, it's everybody knows the huge ramifications it's going to have on our community. So the best way I see it is to gather this information, distribute this information, and the more we can do that, the more we're going to be prepared for the future.
Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I support this as well, because it's just, we need to have a starting point, and we need to make sure staff is all obviously informed top to bottom and move on. Very small thing. Says the proposed internal working group is a working group made up of 5 staff members. There are 6 listed. Just a little thing, but.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks once again, Mr. Mayor. So this can be modified as the future unfolds. I take it. This is a living movement. You can't vote on what I'm about to say, but you know, we've talked about engagement with TC Energy and basically the lack of engagement. So this working group, when we get our new CAO, one of the things I just put the seed in all of our minds, I would really like to see us move with a professional negotiator, which that would be something we have to talk about. We'd have to look about money. You have to do all that kind of stuff. But that's something that I'm thinking about, make this thing alive. One of the paragraphs in here on page 70 is very key. It's a very key portion, and it has to do with the announcement from the Ontario government investing up to 285 million to advance the pre-development of this proposal from Ontario Pump Storage in partnership by TC Energy and Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And it goes on to talk about the environmental assessments and so on. But I think that that paragraph in there is one that there has been some comment out in the public about this TC Energy and Saugeen Ojibwe. And I like that it is included in here. They are part of the discussion and they are part of the framework. And at the very end, it says that the province is going to make the final decision and detailed costings have to be complete. So that paragraph inside here on page 70 is a pretty powerful paragraph. So thanks for that, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Are you ready to vote on this? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Updates on from members appointed to county council committees and local boards. So I imagine you have a report on our last Grey County Council meeting.
I do, Mr. Mayor, yes. County Council last met on the 13th of February. And it was nice to have everybody in person again because we'd had some virtual meetings with the weather in January. The meeting started with Savannah Myers, Director of Economic Development, Tourism and Culture, providing a verbal update on the 2025 Regional Job Fair. The event took place and attracted more than 600 job seekers and 64 employers. Savannah talked about an interesting shift in the local labor market. She says it's more balanced, meaning that businesses are experiencing success filling vacant roles, and that's quite a change from what we've been hearing for the last quite a few years. Council received a verbal update on the Gather campaign, and in your packages today, you'll all have a folder that talks about the Gather campaign. It's really exciting. It's led by Roger Mooking, who is an international TV celebrity. And so the preface is that it's a number of videos that showcase local food producers and local restaurants. And it's just really professionally well done. So I'd encourage you to go and have a look at some of those videos. And they take in the different establishments around the lower tiers in Grey County. Council heard highlights from the minutes of the February 20th. I believe in the first paragraph, I have the wrong date here. The meeting was the 23rd, not the 13th. I apologize. Anyway, Council heard highlights from the minutes of the February 20th Budget and Finance Committee meeting. And as well, the February 12th Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. I'm not on that particular committee, and I don't believe the mayor is either, but I do sit now on the Finance Committee, and I'm really excited to be a new member there. At the first meeting, past Warden Brian Milne was elected the chair. The 10-year capital process was discussed along with the upcoming audit process and the proposed committee work plan for the year. We were also shown a preview of the new Questica open book program that staff will be introducing in the next few weeks. This group will meet every month, so I'll have further updates on that. Grey County will work with the municipality of Grey Highlands to acquire land in Feversham for a new paramedic services base. Base is needed in this area to keep up with response times and meet the increased and projected volume of calls for service. This need was identified as part of the 2023 Paramedic Services Comprehensive Review and is part of the county's plan to improve coverage in rural areas where distance is a factor. This land is located on Grey Road 2 and has close access to Grey Road 4. In the future, there'll be new bases in Dundalk and in Ayton and in Feversham. Council received an update on the progress of the local licensed childcare growth plan. In 2023, Grey County was allocated 504 spaces. And since then, the program was launched and has seen an increase of 516 spaces, which is great. But at the end of 2024, there were more than 2,000 children under the age of 6 remaining on wait lists. There was also a discussion regarding Grey County Transit. Provincial funding for the GTR will expire March 31st. It's been decided that Route 1 between Owen Sound and Dundalk along Highways 6 and 10 will be eliminated, as will Routes 3 and 4, and those go between Owen Sound and the town of Blue Mountains, so through Meaford. Service for the route between Dundalk and Orangeville will continue because it has the highest ridership. County staff we're all super disappointed in this outcome, but it's just a budgetary concern. Staff are continuing to lobby to have funding reinstated. So now that the provincial election is over, hopefully we'll have some success in that regard. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there other committees that met in the recent past?
Mr. Mayor, I do have one more. We are, as the municipality of Meaford, a member of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, and there was a virtual meeting on February the 28th. There was a lot of talk there about the election, which had just happened, and everybody was pleased to see Paul Vickers as our new MPP, and I knew that there will be discussion to update him on the works of the initiative. There's the Great Lakes cleanup event scheduled for September the 28th. Funding is available for garbage bins, food, and et cetera for an event of this nature. The premise is to clean up the shorelines around the Great Lakes. And I know we do our annual spring cleanup, but we might think about participating in this one as well. This initiative is really a strong advocate, especially on the trade war front. They have a meeting set up at the White House to talk about impacts on businesses within their district. And they're working on strategies to help mitigate damages from the tariffs that will be posted on their website. They're working to establish a Great Lakes St. Lawrence Initiative Unity Summit. And I just am really encouraged by this group. I feel they're a strong, unified group, and they really are here to advocate for those of us who are members. So I'm glad that we're part of that.
Yeah, I just underline the fact that, I don't think many people maybe in our municipality are actually cognizant of the fact that we are part of a Pan-American group here, and at least between Canada and the States. So we actually, have a working relationship with some Americans, and we have a lot in common with them because we're all here in the Great Lakes Basin. And I know the collaboration has a lot to do with environment, but it also has commercial impacts, and it's designed to be a body that works for economic development in the region. So I'm sure everything to do with the tariffs is complete anathema to what this group stands for, and we are part of it. So I think I did make a post at one point on my Facebook page to say that we need to be careful not to cut loose all of our ties to Americans, because it isn't the rank and file Americans that are doing this to Canada. It is President Trump. And I think it's a difficult period, and I believe in the Canada Strong position, but I also think that we need to remember that not all Americans are like Mr. Trump. So I need a motion to move out of committee of the whole at this point, Councillor Forder and Councillor Uhrig, and we did that at 3:10 p.m. Moving on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion today? Seeing none, we have a motion for decision, and I'll turn it back over to Deputy Mayor Keaveney to that forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize, it is a bit of a lengthy motion, but I will read it for any of our viewers today. And this is the motion that returning to us in exactly the same language as when we deferred it 2 weeks ago. The recommendation, whereas in 2019, TC Energy made public its plan to construct and operate a major 1,000 megawatt hydroelectric generating facility centered on zero emission electricity generation technology known as pumped storage, related works and undertakings on lands within the municipality of Meaford, and Whereas in 2020, the Council of the Municipality received and reviewed report CAO 2020-03 and unanimously declared conditional support for the proposed facility proceeding to the applicable approval processes led by environmental assessments and impact assessments, including impact assessment under the Federal Impact Assessment Act. And whereas in 2021, the Department of National Defense determined that the proposed facility could be located on a portion of land within the 4th Canadian Division Training Center in Meaford, subject to conditions. And whereas in 2022, the Council of the Municipality discussed the offer by TC Energy to provide community benefits to the municipality in relation to the proposed facility, including council review of report CAO 2022-33 that included a draft framework for a community benefits agreement. And whereas in 2022, the Council of the Municipality completed the 10-year review of its official plan and related community engagement, resulting in adoption of Amendment 34 to its official plan to guide physical change and development across the municipality for the next 25 years, continuing the municipality's environment first planning policy and prioritizing infrastructure that addresses sustainability and climate adaptation. And whereas in 2023, TC Energy advised the municipality that it will reimburse the municipality for the costs of technical peer reviewers of all potential impacts of the proposed facility, legal counsel on all relevant matters, and costs related to the development of a community benefits agreement between the municipality and TC Energy, including a council-approved negotiator. And whereas the municipality seeks to ensure that it has a proper framework of general application to major proposals that in whole or in part are not subject to Ontario's land use planning and approval processes. And whereas the municipality seeks to ensure that this new framework for major proposals will provide it with authority to identify, study, consult with its residents, and assess community impacts and benefits, and develop possible agreement and or conditions related to possible council support. Therefore, be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby directs staff to develop a bylaw of general application to major proposals in order to engage its residents, properly study the proposal's community impacts and benefits, and address these impacts and benefits by agreement, conditions of support, or their combination. Now, sorry.
I just need to ask for a second.
For a second.
Yes. Is there thank you, Councillor Bartley.
And if I may continue, Your Worship, that's a long motion, so I just wanted to try to simplify it. So in plain language, as identified by the province, the municipality of Meaford is the host community for the Ontario Pump Storage Project, the OPS. This council, as we know, was in a current position of conditional support for the project. It is my personal goal to reach a position of full support once an approved community benefit agreement is in place. The purpose of this motion is to provide direction to staff to prepare a bylaw to put us in a proper position to address community benefits. The intent of the bylaw is to define the process in regards to two things. Firstly, how we will structure public engagement so that all interested residents will be able to participate in the community benefits agreement process. And secondly, how the municipality of Meaford will gather and assess information coming from the impact assessment reports regarding positive and negative economic impacts on this project in our community so that we can make the best decision on any future agreements with TC Energy. So that's really what it's all about.
Councillor Forde.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. One thing I'd like a little bit of clarification on is the term major proposals. And so this might be something for staff. How do we define what major proposals are as it pertains? It feels very broad and ambiguous. So I just like to get some comments with regards to how we approach that term major proposals.
Sorry.
They're just deciding who's going to answer that. Val?
Through your Mayor Kettner to Councillor Forder, major proposals would be anything that is, I would say bigger in nature than we have seen before, maybe. I think from Mayor's, Councillor or Deputy Mayor's resolution, I think it's that we're looking or she is looking for a bylaw that will help us in our ability to do the work behind the scenes, maybe. But major proposals, I would say that that's anything of big in nature. I would say, like, I know for planning and there's minor and there's major and there's a definition, but I think for this purpose, I think any bigger proposal that we would have would be a major proposal. I'm sorry, that's.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you again. Thank you for that, Val. So I appreciate what you're saying, but that also is very ambiguous, right? So what's the line of delineation? So do we need to clarify major proposals with regards to like the scale of the project or the impact scope or the community environmental impact? To me, that's just, it's too broad. And maybe I'm overreacting. It's not my hill to die on, but when I look at major proposals, like, what's that line? What's no longer a major proposal where this wouldn't apply? I just don't know where that is.
Through you, Mayor Kettner to Councillor Forder, I think once we, I would think it's during the presentation of the bylaw piece and our report to you, we could define what we consider to be a major proposal or a minor proposal at that stage. Currently, you're right, it's probably ambiguous, but that's what I would think we should be doing.
I would just throw out that I would say, anything in the millions is sort of routine. Anything in the billions is not generally routine for us. It's a thought anyway. Okay, Councillor Urick, and then I'll come back to the side.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it's interesting because that whole sentence, we're kind of stopping at major proposals. Because if it says in whole or part are not subject to Ontario's land use planning and approval processes. So there's a caveat in there already. To your point, Councillor Porter, it would be interesting to see if that literally said to apply to proposals that don't fall into that scope, because that scope's going to cover a lot of standard things. This seems to be addressing anything that's not standard, that's not falling under the standard Ontario land use planning approval process. So should it say to apply to any proposal that doesn't fall within those? That's the only, if we're parsing here, and that's what we're obviously doing. It's a very good point, but there's a caveat attached to it. So now, so we don't actually have to define major and minor. Presumably, we're saying very little of what they're going to do is going to cost $1.50. Like, so any proposals that are going to come in, should we be looking at that aren't already governed by the body that already covers it? That might be the way around it.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And since today is the day that Mr. Mayor, you're going to be calling for a vote on this, I just want to pick up a couple of the comments that I had at the committee of the whole, and I'll just stick to that. I would like to amend this in the very first paragraph where it says known as pump storage related works and undertakings on, and insert the word federal lands within the municipality of Meaford. I say that because very clear reference is made in the third paragraph where it says about the Department of National Defense, and it says the training center in Meaford. Whether you wish for me to give a further background on my thinking, or whether you just wish to call for a seconder for discussion, Mr. Mayor, I leave that to you.
Yeah, well, let's call for a seconder for the motion. I don't see one. You think you can convince us if you speak to this other point? Go ahead.
Pardon,
And then
pardon me?
I'll call for a seconder after you've made your point.
Okay.
then, Okay.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor.
My pleasure.
So when we talk about locations and we talk about our municipality, to me, I view saying the word federal lands within our municipality as very simply a promotional point, and it's been a keystone element of this entire process since it was first brought to our attention back in 2019, which makes for the further conversation which we've just had about what that means on major proposals. This major proposal is on federal lands within the municipality of Meaford. So if someone said, where's this activity? You could say, oh, it's down the 7th line. It's in the former St. Vincent Township. It's 5 kilometers from the Highway 26. You get an idea of where this is located. To say where this is located, you say, well, it's on federal lands in the municipality of Meaford. And I think that right from the very beginning, that there has been discussions on the implications of this proposal right there. So today, because we're going to be voting on it, I talked about it at the committee of the whole. Today, I introduce it again, that we clearly define it and put the word federal before the word lands in the first paragraph. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for this motion? I don't see one, Tony.
Thank you very much for
Councillor
your
Bell.
listening.
Yeah,
I appreciate that and giving me the time to speak. That's why we're here.
Yeah, it isn't clear to me why it would make a lot of difference, really. But at any rate,
I have something else. Is that
yes,
okay?
yeah, no, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Down near the end, we had another quick comment about framework. Using terminology, it's the second last paragraph. And the third last paragraph, having a framework, a new framework. And at the committee of the whole, I was a little off target. When I read this at the committee of the whole, I talked about having community benefits. And at that time, I kind of took myself to talking about the advisory committee. I was off on that one. This is much higher and greater than an advisory committee. And so we're talking about a framework to have in place to talk about community benefits directly back to the proposing entity, TC Energy. My question on the words new framework are this. We have a signed agreement, and I don't believe we've exercised that very well. I think inside the current signed agreement, we have never taken the positive steps forward to actually engage for that under the current framework. So today I ask a question on this. This new framework, will it run parallel with the previously signed document, or will it be viewed as an enhancement to that current signed document? If someone could maybe answer me on that. Is it an enhancement, or is it running parallel with what we've already signed as a municipality?
Go ahead and I'll see how you do it. I'll try and answer too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I hope I understand your question clearly, Councillor Bell. And I would suggest that that framework will be clearly defined in the bylaw. I suggest that we just don't know at this point exactly what the terminology is going to be in the bylaw. Today, we're just giving direction to staff to prepare that bylaw, and I think that's when we'll get clarity on this, on your particular question around the framework. And I'm glad you're asking it, because now staff understand that there is a concern regarding that. So I'm sure that will play into language that we'll see in the eventual bylaw.
You know, I just echo that. We don't know, we're asking or directing staff to develop a bylaw for us to consider. And they will do the groundwork on deciding, you know, what this bylaw should, how it should read, what it should say. We just know that we want to do a better job of ensuring that everybody has an opportunity, like our whole community is engaged and has an opportunity to have input to the whole question of community benefits. Councillor Urick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a problem with any of the motion, but Councillor Ford, you brought up a good point. And I would actually move that we do strike the word major from paragraphs, the second last and third last paragraphs, just because it gives us the flexibility then. We don't have to look at every proposal if we don't want to, but it gives us the opportunity to look at every proposal that comes across in case we want to look at it. So I just think removing the word major in front of proposals in the second and third last paragraphs would give us much more scope. That would be my motion amendment.
Some discussion on that. I'm just reading the motion again here, because it continues that after major proposals that in whole or part are not subject to Ontario's land use planning and approval processes. So I think that we have no problem in looking at an ordinary or a standard type of proposal. This specifically is we're asking for some help so that we can consider, you know, major proposals, you know, that in a way that we might not be able to otherwise.
I agree with that, but having said that, again, putting the word in there, there could be a minor proposal that still doesn't meet, not subject to the Ontario's land use planning and approval processes. And now we get into parsing who says what's minor, what's major. So if we're just removing that word, then it's just anything that doesn't fall under the Ontario land use planning, then we can look at it.
Yeah, and you're a lawyer? I would have a lot more confidence if you were.
I appreciate that. That's my opinion, and based on what we've heard from legal counsel thus far, I would feel comfortable with saying that still.
So, Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As the mover of the motion, I actually don't have issue with that, because I think there's no reason why, and again, we don't know what the bylaw is going to say in its entirety at this point, but with the two things that I spoke to, if we had any project that required, you know, the gathering of information and community engagement and so on, I don't have issue with having a bylaw in place that could direct that process, because who knows what could be in front of us in the future. So as I say, as the mover, I don't have issue with removing the word major.
Councillor Bell?
Thanks once again, Mr. Mayor. So we have an expert in our room and our planner. So is this only a singular item that would not be subject to the Ontario land use planning? That is, everything else in the municipality of Meaford, when they come to the planning department, they are all under the land planning use, and this one is different. Is that correct line of thinking for myself? This is the only one that would cause this statement.
So through you, your worship, I don't think so, actually. So there are things that are in federal jurisdiction now. Examples are telecommunications towers that we talked about just a couple of months ago. There's a protocol for that. We can have our own, so we could have had a separate project, like something like this for those. We chose to go with CRINS. Town Blue Mountains has their own protocol for reviewing those. Some of the other municipalities do. An example that might be something that seems a little bit moot now, but the Green Energy Act also did the same thing when it was in place. As you know, it's been repealed, but when it was in place, it meant that land use planning didn't apply to green energy projects. So I wouldn't want to suggest that in the future or now there are other types of projects that absolutely aren't like this, because there could be, and they may not be on federal lands, they may just be on other lands. So it's possible that there are projects that you don't have control over through the normal land use planning reviews, like official plans and all those things don't apply.
Councillor Yorick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Denise, because I think that strengthens what we're talking about. If we were taking this on whole as only being TCE, but we're talking about this being a catch-all for potential other projects. So once again, we're parsing major and minor. So this gives us a modicum of control over any proposal, not just majors. And that's why I think it's important that verbiage be potentially accurate, or at least give us the latitude to investigate any proposal that we want to look at. Because you're right, under federal statute, there could be a lot of things that come down that come under telecommunications. I mean, what we might want to look at that wouldn't be considered a $1 billion project.
So did we get a seconder for your motion? Okay, all right. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? That is carried. Good. Any other questions or things you want to discuss about this? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Adoption of minutes, the recommendation that be it resolved, Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby adopt the minutes of the council meetings that were held on February 14, 2025, and the closed meetings that were held on January 13, 15, 17, and 27, 2025. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Bartley and Councillor Forder. Everybody's read those minutes? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Anything from the communications list? Councillor Forder.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. So from the correspondence list, I want to bring up item 16. It is the 2025 Save Georgian Bay TC Energy's CANSIA report, a critical analysis. So I just want to read a little something, but then I have a question for staff at the end. So this economic and social benefits report regarding the Ontario Pump Storage Project presents several significant concerns as it was commissioned by TCE, and in my opinion, doesn't reflect an independent view of the project. So just bear with me a second here. So my concerns in relation to this report include inflated job creation figures represented as people years, understated financial risk, lack of comprehensive comparative analysis with alternative renewable technologies and more. So to protect municipal interests and ensure transparency, independent and impartial reviews of reports like these are necessary before they can be accepted as a reliable and objective and credible foundation for municipal decision-making. So my question is, what mechanisms or processes does the municipality currently have in place to ensure critical review and independent validation of reports for major infrastructure projects before they are accepted or relied upon by staff, advisory committees, including the Pump Storage Advisory Committee and our consultants like Strategy Corp and Ainley Group? And then also, has this report been presented to and or discussed with the Pump Storage Advisory Committee?
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, Brandon, I appreciate you bringing that forward. The PSAC agenda for this Thursday is the CANSIA report and is also the rebuttal from Save Georgian Bay. That group has done a lot of research on the numbers that are presented in the report. And granted, they do seem a bit inflated, if I may say. I have suggested, and it is my hope that at some point, TC Energy will do an economic impact report that would be specific to the municipality of Meaford, because that's what we care about. This one is really general, big, area, provincial, regional numbers that don't really give us a flavor of what we can anticipate here. So I hope that we'll eventually get that local report. But yeah, you might want to attend or listen in if you can on Thursday, and there will be solid discussion at PSAC about this report.
That'd be great.
Okay, anything else on the communications list? Councillor Yuri?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 17 is the last item. Just want to mention that, yeah, the Warden's Economic Development Leadership Luncheon, that's going to be taking place Friday, April 4th. It's designed specifically, it says, for elected officials and senior management, senior staff, sorry. My concern, I was wondering, whether anybody at staff had responded that somebody from the municipality is going to be attending. I know, again, we're in flux, so I get that. I've already said I'm going. It just occurred to me that if we at least acknowledge that somebody would be going from the municipality from the staff perspective, if it wasn't one of our current senior staff, I know that our current small business liaison is working a lot with the Grey County on various things. Could we send a junior staff as opposed to a senior staff if we didn't have a senior staff that felt able or qualified to go? Because I just think we should be there at the table beyond, if we have an opportunity for senior staff to participate, I think they should be there.
Through you, Mayor Kentner, to Councillor Yurg, I have not responded, but we will make sure somebody attends on the 4th of April.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we have a closed session to move into. So the recommendation is, be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford does now go into a closed session at 3:38 p.m. with the interim CAO / treasurer / director of financial services, the director of community services and HR, and acting clerk in attendance to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, and specifically related to the recruitment of a CAO. A mover and a seconder for this motion, Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Yurg. All in favor? And we will see you on the other side of this meeting to report out on it. We're back, folks, and reporting out on our closed session. Council met to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, specifically related to the recruitment of a CAO. Direction was given to staff regarding CAO recruitment. And with that, I declare today's meeting adjourned.